Welcome! Welcome to the official announcement video for a Moby-Dick Read-Along. It's happening. I've talked about it, and now we're doing it. Yeah, if you watched my little exciting updates video, I mentioned this. This was my third update, but this is going to get its own video because I want to give it a launching pad. So as many of you know, this is my favorite book, Moby-Dick by Herman Melville. I read it the summer that I graduated from college, traveling with people I love, probably in the happiest period of my life thus far, or one of, who cares about ranking your own life? But I had the most wonderful experience reading this very strange and abstract children edition with the kind of plasticky pages, and it has been on my mind. If I had to give like a guess, like if I could get like $1 million, if I guessed right, I would say I've probably thought about it for 93% of the days I've been alive since then. This book and the ideas in it. It's just taken over something. Some part of me has been struck by it. And I want to share it with y'all. So this video, the purpose is for me to sincerely extend my hand for you to join me. For no other reason than I think this is a beautiful piece of art, and I want everyone to experience a beautiful piece of art. And this book particularly, I think, could use, an enthusiastic lover of the book, because it has a weird reputation for being not exciting and insane and fun and just some of the greatest writing ever. It has a reputation, culturally, in a very vague way, of being, of all things, boring and long, which is crazy to me, truly crazy to me. And so I'll address those things, but I really would love for you watching this. If you've never read Moby-Dick, if you have, you probably love it, or maybe you don't. But if you haven't read it and you have this kind of idea that it's not for you, it's difficult, I want to first address that concern. I have my little notebook because I've prepared for this. There's two concerns that I want to address to get you to join this amazing adventure. The first is that thing that I mentioned, that it's a boring book. Here's why I think it has this reputation. Moby-Dick by Herman Melville is around 800 pages, depending on the edition. So pretty long. I mean, it has also that reputation of being a really long book, the longest book. And it is. It's a big book, but it's not longer than like the Brothers Karamazov or obviously War and Peace, or certainly not as long as The Tale of Genji or other things like that. Its length really isn't such that it's just like, it feels like it's always moving towards the end. It never feels like you're just stuck. But the reason why people think that Moby-Dick is boring is, I believe, because of this. Because within the 800 pages of this book, there are probably 300, maybe even 400 pages of riveting plot, of seafaring adventure, chases, whaling, excitement, action, characters that you care about and love that are interesting. And the rest of it is bizarre digressions into the nature of things, or what things mean, or very friendly Ishmael-voiced ponderings about things around him, or like the color white or whatever, that are fascinating too, but they're not plot. And a plot chapter will end, and you'll go into that, and I can see how a reader might encounter those parts of the book and think, this is so boring, why don't you just get on with it? Needless to say, those chapters that are not plot are some of my favorite. And the immortality of this book, its bottomlessness, really comes from not the strange chapters that are about non-plot stuff. Not just that. It's about how they work together, the balance between the whiteness of the whale, or cetology even, with stories like the Townhouse story, chapters like the Townhouse story, or the Pequod meets the Rachel. These great chapters that are just insane plot-wise. Those two things together make this book very special. It couldn't be one or just by itself, but together they're incredible. And that's why I think this book might have the reputation of being boring or long or droning on, in the same way that the Brothers Karamazov has like a great murder mystery in it, except it makes up like 20% of the book, and the rest of it is all these conversations, and then people think, oh, it's boring because of that. But no, it's both of them working together that makes it incredible. So that's my first little concern to address. The second concern is this one. And this one I really want to spend little time on because it's the idea that Moby-Dick is difficult. And, I'm afraid that I just won't get it. And you know what? There's nothing, at least in my opinion, there's nothing to get about really anything except what you feel. I feel that way, at least, about art. I've always said to my friends and family, and this is probably an idea that's been expressed many times, but music means what it makes you feel. And in many ways, I feel the same about literature, even though it is kind of a more information-based medium. Music maybe is very abstract, but trust me, even though this is composed of words, it is very abstract at times, and emotionally so. And so when people go into Moby-Dick, they often also have this perception of it being a book that's loaded with symbolism. Everything means something, and it could mean many things. And in a great afterword for my travel copy of Moby-Dick, that's a Signet Classic, the afterword guy says something along the lines of, if you approach the book with the idea, what does the clam chowder represent? Is it Calvinism? You'll miss maybe some of the more important things. That's fun, and it's certainly engaging to think about that. But the heart of this book, of Moby-Dick, is its pleasure. I think that should be the reason you go into most reading experiences is pleasure of one kind or another. And so if you're worried that if you're not smart enough, something is, no offense, something as stupid as thinking you're not smart enough. No one's not smart enough to get a great piece of literature, I think. Maybe a book can reach you at the wrong time of your life if you're, not have the experience or something like that if you're older or younger. But you don't need to be educated. You don't need to do anything to enjoy this. You can start at Call Me Ishmael and go. And I think really, really get into it. And the reason I know that is because I read this edition, which has absolutely no critical apparatus, no introduction, nothing. This is just the text. And I loved it. I didn't know anything about it. And even though, of course, there's parts, there's nautical terminology, there's references that I don't understand. I haven't read the whole Bible through for a long time, besides like what I experienced of it in my childhood. I haven't read nearly as much Shakespeare as Melville. I think he read it all. And there's those references, but it doesn't matter. At least in the enjoyment level, you can still get so much joy and pleasure out of it. And I'm sure it deepens once you learn all those things, but I don't want that to be a barrier to anyone, because it wasn't to me. And I think that this book is very lovable. Regardless. And I talk about this in my Moby-Dick video, which I'll mention. So that leads me to number 2. So the first part that I just talked about were the concerns you might have for not reading it. And this is, hopefully now, the second part is you've been convinced that, okay, I can do it. Anyone can. I really believe that. And that's, how should I prepare for Moby-Dick? How should I jump into this world? Should I just jump in? Should I read a Wikipedia article about whaling? Should I whatever? The first preparatory system that I'd like to put forward is this. None at all. Because like I said, that's what I did. And it works. You don't have to know anything. Moby-Dick is a book such that it's a book that basically explains itself. It explains whaling. It explains pretty much everything that has to say. You don't need some sort of external knowledge. Herman Melville knew that the whaling industry was not going to last forever, and he explains it. Sometimes infamously explains it. But you don't need to be a scholar in 19th century American literature to just go into this world and love it, especially because Moby-Dick begins in a really, really comical, fun, buddy narrative. With a buddy narrative. It has the Ishmael Queequeg chapters at the start, and of course the first chapter is just amazing. And for that reason, you don't have to prepare. But if you want to, I will just tell you what I'm doing to prepare. I'm not an expert on this book. There are people on BookTube who have read it more times than maybe I've read books at all. But I can tell you what I'm doing because it'll be fun. The first thing that I've done is I've taken every single edition that I can find of Moby-Dick, and I have gone out of my way to read the introduction to it. So, for instance, I walked, back in the winter, I walked to a local coffee shop, and while it was snowing, actually, in Alabama, it was like 26 degrees or something, and I walked there and got some peppermint tea, and they had the cloth-bound Penguin Classics with the whales on the cover, and I opened it, and I read Andrew Delbanco's introduction. And I think I have a video of that on my phone. So there's like a 50% chance this won't happen, but here I'm going to show that video really right now. So your video. Snowy day, reading the introduction of Moby-Dick, drinking some peppermint tea with water in Cursite after walking here when it was 26 degrees. And then I'm gonna go get some food and read you 20 pages of Divinity, go home and read the Brothers Karamazov. What an amazing day. I'm so grateful to be alive. And now the video's done. Hopefully you got that. If you didn't, then whatever. But yeah, so I read that introduction and it was great. And then I got this copy. I don't know if this is mine or my dad's. I think I bought it and then gave it to my dad at that the library haul to end all book haul videos trilogy that I did. And there is a great introduction here that I've read. Maybe I haven't finished it, so I will finish that before I start. So there are like book introductions for different editions that I definitely want to read. Of course, Nathaniel Philbrick wrote the foreword here. And one other thing I've done to prepare is in the last month I read his book, Nathaniel Philbrick's book, Why Read Moby-Dick, which is just a passionate treatise on the history of the book, how he wrote it, his state, its meaningfulness today. Of course, he's theorizing that Moby-Dick will be perpetually relevant because its themes are just parts of life. So I will definitely keep that in my mind. I'll read his foreword. I have with me here two other books. One I thrifted yesterday. It's called Herman Melville, Stories, Poems, and Letters by the author of Moby-Dick. And it's in 4 sections. And I'm going to read one of these sections in preparation. And it's the one that is the exchange of his letters with Nathaniel Hawthorne. So for those of you who don't know, one of the ways this book came into existence is because that Herman Melville cultivated a friendship and developed a literary crush and maybe even a personal crush on the author Nathaniel Hawthorne. And was so inspired by him, it kind of gave him something to work for, a person almost to, you know, the reason you do a work of art comes from a lot of places and it's not really pinnable on one thing. But I know for sure in my own life, sometimes I've made a work of art because I was thinking about someone. And that really influenced Moby-Dick's writing, and the letters between Melville and Hawthorne in this book really show that. So I'm going to read those letters back and forth. And then the last thing that I think I'll do is read this. This is, wow, this book is just such a fascinating history. In the year 1820, a whale ship called the Essex was cruising the Pacific Ocean around 2,000 miles away from, I think, a continent or maybe most land, like any large landmass at least, when it was repeatedly battered by an 85-foot sperm whale just against the hull until it sank and most of the people died. It was probably the most famous like nautical disaster that had happened until the Titanic happened. And the 20 survivors from the initial attack were like in 3 boats and deliberated as to whether they would land on some close islands nearby. And they decided not to because there were reported cannibals on the island and they were afraid. And I don't know how long later they were found 3,000 miles away from their initial attack point off the coast of South America, and there are 5 people on a boat holding human bones. So, of course, they'd resorted to cannibalism. And I think I mentioned this in a BookTube video, actually. I mentioned this when I think I've given this exact spiel on when I did a book haul on that. But that story is so fascinating, and needless to say, the first-hand account of that ended up in the hands of a young whaler on the Acushnet, who grew up to be and was Herman Melville, which influenced Moby-Dick. So Nathaniel Philbrick, who's popped up now 3 times, wrote an introduction to this, and this is the accounts of that historical event that influenced this book. So those are all the external things I'm going to be kind of doing that I've already sort of done to prepare. And, you know, I could try to read more Bible. So, for instance, I actually already read Jonah and the Whale of the Bible to prepare for this, but that was a couple months ago. I could read Hamlet and other Shakespeare. It's like you could read a lot to give you context, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do what I've done and have these kind of final remaining things, and that's going to be my preparation. Besides that, you can watch my video on Moby-Dick on BookTube. It was like the 3rd video I ever made. So I'll link that below. Yeah, that's preparation. So part 1 was the concerns. Part 2 is the preparation. And part 3, how are we actually going to do it? The structure, the planning. Here's my plan. We're going to do it in segments of 10 chapters at a time. So starting with the extracts and the etymology, if you want to read those, you don't have to read those. You can skip them if you don't want to, and if you don't want to read them. And then chapter 1, Call Me Ishmael, to chapter 10. And then I'll make a video on it. And I'll try to keep the videos around once a week. But my philosophy is I'm going to be fluid on this. I'm just going to read it at my own pace. As I read other things, I have plans to read hopefully Beowulf with Joshua Kribo, or Travels with Charlie with Randy Ray in the meantime. So it's not going to be probably the only thing I'm focusing on. But at times it probably will be, and also I love this book, so I might end up making videos rather quickly as I read the chapters. And that just comes with the stipulation that I don't want you to worry about keeping up or being too slow or being too fast. I just kind of feel like we should read it as the ocean flows, and also understanding that these videos will be hopefully watched by people in the future who are reading Moby-Dick, and they'll just have the whole sequence, and it doesn't really matter if I release them exactly once every week. So if I'm reading it in segments of 10 chapters, that means that there will be 14 episodes, because there are 135 chapters in Moby-Dick. So we'll start with, like I said, extracts, etymology, chapters 1 through 10, and go all the way up to chapter 130, and then the final episode will be on the final 5 chapters, the final 3 of which are very famous and exciting. Maybe after that I'll do a sort of like breakdown video of the whole thing. Maybe not. But yeah, around 14 episodes of Moby-Dick content. I have only 25 videos on my channel so far. So this will make up a large chunk of that. Yeah, and that's my plan. That's pretty much it. Wait a minute, that's pretty much not it. I forgot to add 2 things. Number 1 is that we're going to start on August 27th, 2025. So 1 week from now is when I'll upload the first chapters 1 through 10. That's the only date I'll plan. So that's it. And then from then on, we're flown in the ocean, like I said. The second thing that I wanted to mention is what edition you should read / what to do. The great thing about Moby-Dick is that it's in the public domain. So there is, on Project Gutenberg, many free editions. I'll link one below. If you have an e-reader, you can also just read it on your laptop if you want to do something like that. Besides that, like I mentioned, you can read an edition. There's so many cheap ones that have no critical apparatus because it's in the public domain. But the Penguin Classics are always good. They have one of I think a humpback whale breaching that's pretty good with the Andrew Del Banco introduction. And besides that, I really just think whatever edition makes you want to read it. For me, I was excited. It's my favorite book, so I splurged to have this edition. But whatever you like. So yeah, August 27th start date, and then it's on Project Gutenberg. That was the only logistical thing that I forgot to add in the previous video. So back to the other thing that I was just saying. Okay, bye. A Moby-Dick Read-Along. I'm so excited. This edition is so beautiful. It has weird cover art. These guys are cartoonish. Obviously, this is not very realistic, but it's really cool. This back cover is so beautiful. The harpoon in the whale's eye. We have Queequeg in the front flap of this French flap, and I think Ishmael here. And then all these diagrams that are so beautiful. Killing machines, killing tools for how to dismantle a whale. Very brutal things. By the way, this book will have some brutality in it, but this book will have everything in it. Yeah, and that's it. I hope you join me. If not, no worries. And if you're not joining me, you're welcome to watch the videos, but also you're welcome to just skip them totally. But I hope that I can share this with y'all. And the last thing I'll say is that if any people who are booktubers want to reach out to me and we can make an episode together, or you want to be included on, maybe chapter 75 or something happens to be a chapter you love of Moby-Dick and you'd love to talk about it, shoot me an email, even if I don't know you, and we'll put it together. It'll be fun. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'm really excited to do this with y'all. Thank you. Bye.